Hello and welcome to the revision video for Religion and Prejudice. This is for the Religion and Life Issues paper of AQA GCSE Religious Studies B. Just a couple of admin points to go through before we start. First of all, you need to have a pen and a piece of paper in front of you. If you see this pen image or the paper on your screen at the time, I'll be asking you to take some notes or to write something onto your piece of paper. So make sure you're doing that. If you need extra time in order to do that, then feel free to pause at any time. If I want you to pause the video in order for you to have some extra thinking time, then there'll be a pause button like this one on the screen here. And if you're doing an exam question and there is an image like this on the screen, then that'll tell you the amount of time I want you to spend doing that exam question. Be really strict with yourself in terms of time, because that will give you the most realistic exam experience and it'll be the most useful practice that you can be doing. The first thing to think about in this topic on prejudice and discrimination is what these two words mean and what the difference is between them. As we're going through this, just write down 3 different bullet points that you think would be really useful for you in the exam. If you learn these 2 key words, it will help you through the whole topic. So prejudice is to think about someone negatively just because of their colour, race, religion, age, disability or lifestyle. Discrimination is when these prejudiced ideas are put into action. It's treating people unfairly just because of their colour, race, gender, religion, age, disability or lifestyle. So just think about what the difference is between those 2 things. Your 3rd bullet point should explain the difference. To start with then, we're going to do a keywords test. You need to give the keyword to match each one of these definitions. This is a really important skill to have for your exam because it means that whenever you're asked a question and a keyword comes up in it, you'll know exactly how to answer the question, being really specific and making sure that you get all the marks available. So write down the keyword that goes with each of these definitions. First one, to judge someone before knowing them because of the way they look or who they are. A way of thinking about people. Number 2, to act on prejudice, treating someone unfairly because of their race, religion, gender or ethnicity. Number 3, having a simple image of people and applying it to everyone in a group. Number 4, blaming certain groups or one person for problems in society. Number 5, treating people more favourably because the group they belong to have been badly treated in the past. For example, giving a black person a job over a white person because black people were discriminated against in the past. Number 6, prejudice against someone because of their ethnic group or nationality. Number 7, prejudice against someone because of their age. Number 8, prejudice against someone because of their gender. Number 9, living in peace with others. This requires people to act justly and have tolerance and understanding of others. Number 10, used to refer to people of the same skin colour, ethnic group or nationality. Number 11, accepting the beliefs and practices of others and valuing their contribution to life and society. Number 12, legal or moral entitlements to be able to do or not do something. Number 13, the belief that every person has been created by God and is of value to him. Everyone is special regardless of what they look like. Number 14, working to bring about what is right or fair according to the law or making up for things that have been done wrong in the past. Okay, assess yourself, see how well you've done, give yourself a mark for everyone you get right. First one was to judge someone before knowing them because of the way they look or who they are. It's a way of thinking about people. This is prejudice. If you have a look at the word, you can see within it you've got prejudge. If you think of it like this, then it will mean that you don't forget that definition. Next one, to act on a prejudice, treating someone unfairly because of their race, religion, gender or ethnicity. This is discrimination. Now we should have already written down in our previous notes that the difference is that prejudice is just judgment, whereas discrimination is action. So we might show prejudice to someone in our thoughts, whereas discrimination is actually treating someone differently because of what we believe. Next one, having a simple image of people and applying it to everyone in a group, that's a stereotype. Blaming certain groups or one person for the problems in society, that's scapegoating. We can see examples of scapegoating in places like Nazi Germany, where Jewish people were blamed for the problems with the economy. Next, treating people more favourably because the group they belong to have been badly treated in the past. For example, giving a black person a job over a white person because black people were discriminated against in the past. This is positive discrimination. Now, positive discrimination we'll look at later on, but there are advantages and disadvantages and reasons why some people think it's a good thing and others think it's a really bad thing. Next, prejudice against someone because of their ethnic group or nationality. This is racism. Prejudice against someone because of their age, ageism. Prejudice against someone because of their gender, sexism. You'll notice with all three of these types of prejudice, they end with ism. If you remember that for your exam, you're more likely to remember these keywords. Next one, living in peace with others. This requires people to act justly and have tolerance and understanding of others. This is harmony. So if you say people are living in harmony, it means that they're living in peace with other people. Next, this is used to refer to people of the same skin colour, ethnic group or nationality. This is the race of a person. Obviously, if people are being discriminated against because of this, then it's racism. Next one, accepting the beliefs and practices of others and valuing their contribution to life and society. This is tolerance. Notice that with tolerance, we don't have to agree with what people believe, but we do need to accept it and value it. Next is legal or moral entitlements to be able to do or not do something. These are our rights. People give rights to us, and we're entitled to be able to use them. Next is the belief that every person is being created by God and is of value to him. Everyone is special regardless of what they look like. This is the value of the individual. Next, working to bring about what is right or fair according to the law or making up for things that have been done wrong in the past. This is justice. Hopefully you've been able to name all of those key words. If not, go back, have a look at the definition and make sure that you do know that key word. I'll be testing you on them as the video goes on. Throughout the video, I'll be going through some keys to success, which will be religious teachings that will be easy to remember and should help you to do better in your exam. The first of these is a Christian teaching, which you should already know. It's the fact that Christians believe in love your neighbour. Jesus taught Christians to love everyone and be kind and caring towards others, no matter who they are. I want you to pause the video and think about how this would affect a Christian's attitude to discrimination. Think about the definition of discrimination and think about what love your neighbour means in terms of the way that they should act towards others. Pause your video to write your answer now. Hopefully, you should have got something along the lines of, believing in love your neighbour will affect a Christian's attitude to discrimination because discrimination is not a loving action. If you discriminate, you are treating others unkindly, and therefore Christians should never discriminate against other people. At some points in the exam, you may be asked to think about what causes prejudice or discrimination. Now, there are 5 main reasons why people are prejudiced. There may be other reasons why people show prejudice towards others, but the easiest ones to think about are these ones that we have here. So the ones that we want you to know about are parents, the media, ignorance, scapegoating, and fear due to a bad experience. I'll go through each one of these individually in a little bit more detail now. The first of these causes is parents. As we go through this, write down 2 bullet points explaining how parents cause prejudice and why it's a problem. Parents have a huge influence over their children. If children grow up hearing prejudiced comments, this will affect how they view other races, religions and cultures. It's particularly problematic because we love our parents. We trust what they tell us. And so if they tell us something negative about another race, religion or group, we're very likely to believe it. This is likely to cause prejudice in us that stays with us for the rest of our lives, and possibly something that we pass on to our own children. Time for our first surprise keywords test. Write down the definition for racism. For a bonus, can you give an example? This bonus will be particularly useful to remember in 2-mark exam questions. Racism is prejudice against someone because of their ethnic group or nationality. An example could be when black people were abused, killed and separated from white people in pre-civil rights America. Time for our next cause of prejudice. This is the media. Again, write down 2 bullet points to explain how the media causes prejudice and why it's a problem. So the media is a powerful influence over people, and it can contain biased views and stereotypes of particular groups that make people prejudiced. For example, the media might have storylines blaming immigrants for unemployment, and if that's the case, people will start to believe it. Now, a big problem with the media is that people have trust in it. A lot of the things that happen in newspapers or reported on the news are true, and people can see evidence of the truth of those things. Therefore, when they tell you that it's Muslims who are doing a particular thing, or immigrants who are to blame for another thing, you're likely to believe it because other things that they tell you are true. What we have to remember with the media is that all media articles are written by people, and people are always just as vulnerable to stereotypes and prejudice as everybody else. Time for another one of our keys to success. This one's the Golden Rule. Now, the Golden Rule is mainly a Christian teaching, but it can be found in pretty much every other religion. So you could say in your exam that it's Islamic teaching as well. The teaching is, treat others the way that you would like to be treated. This is a really simple teaching that basically just means think about how you would like to be treated and make sure that you do the same to other people. On your piece of paper, I want you to write down how this teaching shows that discrimination is wrong. Pause the video and answer the question now. Hopefully, you should have written something like, this shows that discrimination is wrong because you would not like to be discriminated against, therefore you shouldn't discriminate against others. It doesn't follow the teaching of treat others the way that you would like to be treated. The next cause of prejudice that we're going to look at is ignorance. Remember to make your bullet point notes whilst we talk about this, about what it is and why it would be a problem. Some people say that ignorance is the biggest cause of prejudice. Ignorance is when people have little knowledge about individuals, groups, or beliefs different to theirs. They're more likely to believe what they hear about them. This can lead to prejudice by believing incorrect ideas about a person or group before knowing them. If we have no experience of a different culture, religion, race, or sex, then we're more likely to believe what people tell us about it. Really, we require ignorance to be there before we start to believe what other people tell us about different groups. If you already knew lots of old people who were really kind and helpful, and then one of your friends at school told you that they hated all old people because they smelt and were selfish, then you would be less likely to believe them. If you didn't know any old people, then what have you got to tell you that they are wrong? So that ignorance is an essential part of you developing your prejudice towards somebody. The next key to success that we're going to look at is an Islamic teaching, and it's the fact that all Muslims believe that they're part of the Ummah. Muslims believe that they are all part of one big community, no matter what colour, age, gender or nationality they belong to. They need to treat everybody equally. This is illustrated really well in this image down here. This is a picture of Muslims on Hajj walking around the Kaaba in Mecca. Everybody is wearing the same white clothing, regardless of where they've come from or how wealthy they are. What I'd like you to think about and write down on your piece of paper is how this belief will affect a Muslim's attitude towards ageism. Pause your video now and answer the question. Hopefully, you'll have written something along the lines of, Belief in the Ummah will affect a Muslim's attitude towards ageism because they believe that everybody is absolutely equal. Therefore, everybody should be treated equally. It doesn't matter what age you are. Everybody within the community has equal rights to absolutely everything. The next cause of prejudice that we need to look at is scapegoating. Remember to make notes on what this is and how it causes prejudice. Scapegoating means blaming certain groups or one person for the problems in society. An example of this is Hitler blaming the Jews for the economic problems in Germany. He used the media and speeches to influence the German people so much that they also blamed the Jews. In actual fact, Jewish people in Germany had done nothing wrong. Hitler took this even further in using it as an excuse to wipe out many of the Jews in Germany and Poland, for no other reason than the fact that they were Jewish. Scapegoating is a really dangerous cause of prejudice because people think that they know exactly why they hate somebody. They think that they've been given evidence in order to be able to hate somebody. And that can mean that it's quite difficult to stop somebody from showing prejudice towards that particular group. The next cause of prejudice I want you to make notes on is fear. Remember, make 2 bullet point notes on what it is and why it's a problem. Fear comes from having a bad experience with someone, and it might mean that you think that everybody within that group is like that. For example, when you were young, you might have been frightened by grumpy old men and now think that all old men are grumpy. Equally, someone may be mugged by a group of young teenagers who are wearing hooded tops. This might make them form an opinion that all groups of hooded young men are going to mug them and cause fear in them. It's an understandable prejudice because it's based on experience, but people don't realise that they're creating a stereotype, and therefore the prejudice that they may hold against other people are actually unfair. Time for another keywords test. Give the definition for scapegoating. Try to give an example. Scapegoating is blaming certain groups or one person for the problems in society. An example of this could be immigrants being blamed for unemployment problems in the UK. The next thing that you need to know about is positive discrimination. Remember to take notes. Try to give 2 bullet points explaining what positive discrimination is and whether you think it's a good or a bad thing. Positive discrimination is treating people more favourably because the group they belong to have been treated badly in the past. For example, this could mean giving a black person a job over a white person simply because black people were discriminated against in the past. Also, over the last 10 years, police and fire services have actually advertised for people in minority groups to apply for jobs. This will give people from such groups an advantage as they're often the victims of discrimination. Think to yourself about the idea of positive discrimination. Think about whether you think it's fair or unfair. Obviously, positive discrimination gives people a chance who've been discriminated against in the past. This is why many people think that it's okay. Because we've taken things away from people in the past, it's only fair to give them a chance now. Other people think that the very word discrimination included in the phrase suggests that it's a bad thing. By positively discriminating in favour of one group, we're negatively discriminating against another group. Many people may argue that if the police, for example, hire people off the grounds of their race rather than off the grounds of whether they're the best people for the job, we'd actually be living in a less safe society. It doesn't seem fair not to give people work based on merit. The next key to success I want us to think about is another Christian and Islamic teaching, and it's the sanctity of life. This is the idea that Christians and Muslims believe that all life is sacred because it's been created by God. Whether a person is black or white, man or woman, young or old, everyone is God's creation, and so they deserve respect. What key word introduced at the start of the video does this teaching remind you of? Write down your answer now. I want you to think about the value of the individual. This is the belief that everybody has been created by God and is of value to him. Everyone is special regardless of what they look like. It's basically exactly the same as the idea of the sanctity of life. If you're asked in your exam to discuss the value of the individual, the sanctity of life would be a really good teaching to be able to bring in. On your paper, write down the heading, different types of prejudice. I want you to look at the pictures on the screen and try to write down 2 bullet points for each type of prejudice shown. One of the bullet points should be the name of the type of prejudice, the other should be a definition of it, or an explanation. Pause the video now and write down as many of the ones that you can see on the screen as you can. In this first one, we can see an image of 2 men having a conversation about women. One saying men are just smarter than women, the other saying women shouldn't be politicians because they can't handle the pressure. Both of these are obviously stereotypes of women and are showing sexism towards them. The next image that we have shows some eggs looking angrily at one egg that's a different colour. This is clearly showing racism. Racism is when somebody shows prejudice towards another person because of their skin colour, ethnic group or nationality. The next picture that we have shows a sign saying seniors do not apply within. This is clearly an example of ageism. People are being discriminated against here because of their age. In this case, it's elderly people, but ageism can be just as much of a problem when it's experienced against teenagers or younger people. Just think about the way that some teenagers might be treated by security guards in shopping centres. The next image shows a really clear example of religious. Any form of discrimination aimed at a particular religious group is how we would define religious prejudice. This can't be confused with racism. If you want to talk about Muslims being discriminated against, please use religious prejudice in your exam. Racism is based solely on race, ethnic group, nationality, the colour of someone's skin. Finally, we have disability discrimination. The image shows a disabled person on one side of a chasm whilst everybody else is on the other side. Disability discrimination could be things as simple as not providing disabled access to buildings. Other things could include talking down to people who are disabled or not allowing them to do a particular job because you don't think they're capable of doing it. Time for another keywords test. Give the definition of tolerance. Tolerance is accepting the beliefs and practices of others and valuing their contribution to life and society. An example of this could be allowing people of a different religion to express and practice their own religion within society. Next, we need to talk about the effects of prejudice. As I go through these 3 main effects, I want you to write down a bullet point to explain what each one of them might be. When we talk about the effect of something, we're talking about what happens because of it. These are 3 really serious examples of what can happen if prejudice is left unchecked. The first of these is genocide. This is when a large group of people are killed. A famous example of this is the Holocaust. Hitler rounded up and killed 11 million people during the Holocaust. This included 6 million Jews, simply for the fact that they were Jewish. This is a really serious effect of prejudice, but people haven't learned. More recently than the Holocaust, there have been genocide in Rwanda and Bosnia, as well as in other places around the world. Segregation is when people separate themselves from others due to prejudice. This can happen on a small scale or a large scale. An example of large-scale segregation could be apartheid in South Africa. For more than 40 years, the government in South Africa enforced separation between white and black people, gave white people access to places black people were not allowed access to, as well as jobs and public facilities. The final effect of prejudice I'm going to talk about is hate crimes. People can be injured or killed due to prejudice, so this includes racist or sexist murders, as well as murders committed because of religious prejudice. An example of this is the example of Anthony Walker. He was an 18-year-old schoolboy who was murdered in Liverpool just because of the colour of his skin. If you want an example of tolerance, harmony and forgiveness, look up Anthony Walker on the internet and watch a video showing his mum and sister forgiving his killers because of their Christian beliefs. I want you to think about the effects of prejudice and try to think of at least 3 other things that could happen because of prejudice that we haven't already talked about. Pause the video and write down 3 bullet points now. Here are some ideas you might have had. Prejudice could cause war. It could cause victims to feel worthless, depressed or suicidal. It could lead to terrorism. It could lead to discrimination, so actually being sexist, racist or ageist. It could also lead to positive discrimination. The next key to success that we need to think about is a Christian one, and it's the fact that Christians believe that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. This is a quotation from the Bible written by St. Paul, and it basically means that every person is important and valuable because there's a part of God within them. I want you to think about this question here. Referring to one of the effects of prejudice, how does this teaching show a Christian should never be prejudiced? And remember, we need to be referring to the effects of prejudice, so you need to mention one specific effect whilst you're doing this. Pause the video now and answer the question. Okay. Hopefully, you should have got something along the lines of, this teaching shows a Christian should never be prejudiced because they believe that there's a valuable part of God within everyone. This means that they would never commit something like a hate crime because they believe that everybody is just as valuable as each other due to this part of God within them. Killing somebody just because of the colour of their skin doesn't take into account the fact that everybody has a piece of God inside of them. Next, on your piece of paper, I want you to write down ways that we could stop or prevent prejudice or discrimination. Can you suggest any ways that people could fight against prejudice and discrimination? As a hint, think about what Martin Luther King did, what the law does, or how religion tries to stop prejudice and discrimination. Pause the video now and write down as many ideas as you can. Hopefully you should have been able to write down about Martin Luther King and how he protested against prejudice, how he led the civil rights movement, and how he eventually stopped segregation in America through his actions. Alongside that, we have the laws in the UK that fight against prejudice and discrimination. Laws like the Race Relations Act make it illegal to discriminate against others because of the colour of their skin. Religions try to stop prejudice through spreading the teachings that we've spoken about already. Teachings like love your neighbour or your body's a temple of the Holy Spirit show religious believers that everybody should be equal or that everybody should be treated with love and respect. If religions spread these ideas, then they may stop prejudice and discrimination. Time for us to practice a 3-mark exam question. It's based around the idea of prejudice and discrimination being wrong. The question is, religious believers should never show prejudice to those with lifestyles different to their own. Do you agree? Remember, for a 3-mark exam question, you'll always be given a statement and you'll be asked whether you agree with it or not. To answer the question, remember these things. Always answer the question that's being asked. Refer to specific key words from the question in your answer. Here, we'll be talking about people with lifestyles that are different to our own. Alongside this, you need to make sure that you give your own opinion. Make it really clear which side of the argument you're going to say. So do you agree or do you disagree with the statement? Finally, for 3 marks, you need to give 3 clear reasons. You need to make sure that they are different and clearly different. If you do all those things, you'll get 3 marks. Give yourself 3 minutes to answer this exam question. Pause the video now and see what you can get. Here's a model answer that would have got 3 out of 3. See how it compares to yours. I agree with the statement because they believe in love your neighbour, which means to be kind and caring to everyone. This means that they should never show prejudice to anyone because prejudice is not being kind and caring. I disagree because people should never show prejudice to those with different lifestyles to their own, not just religious people. I agree because Muslims believe that Allah loves the fair-minded, which means that he does not like people being unfair. This means that they should never show prejudice, as prejudice is being unfair, which Allah does not like. Let's just have a look at what's going on in this answer. First of all, we've got 3 clear points to support our view. 1 here, 2 here, 3 here. As well as this, we've got a really clear indication at the beginning of each one of the points whether it agrees or disagrees with the statement. Finally, each one of the points is very clearly backed up and explained. Each one links back to whether we should show any kind of prejudice or whether we should show prejudice towards people with lifestyles different to our own. We're linking back to the question and making sure that we're answering the question. Hopefully you've done this in your answer and you've got 3 out of 3. Previously we tried to think of ways that we could stop prejudice and discrimination. We're going to go through a few of the ways that we try to stop prejudice and discrimination in society, and for each one of the ways I want you to make sure that you're writing down 2 bullet points to explain how it might stop prejudice and discrimination. The first one of these is a law. Britain has introduced a few laws against discrimination over the last 30 or 40 years. The Sex Discrimination Act, Race Relations Act, Disability Discrimination Act and Equality Act are all examples of laws which have been passed against committing discrimination against others. If people do not think that they've been treated fairly by an employer or by somebody else, then they can take that person to court and potentially get them fined or put in prison. The law is a powerful way of being able to fight against discrimination, but it can't get rid of prejudice. Just because we make something illegal doesn't mean we can stop people thinking about it. And remember, prejudice is just a judgment based on people's thoughts. They have to discriminate to really be prosecuted for it. Time for another keywords test. What is the definition for rights? Rights are our legal or moral entitlements to be able to do or not do something. For example, every human has rights according to human rights law. For example, the right to life or the right to not be discriminated against. Other rights in some countries could include the right to vote or the right to a fair trial. Back to our question of how we can stop prejudice and discrimination. Remember, whilst we go through this, you need to make 2 bullet point notes on how this thing would stop prejudice and discrimination. One thing that can happen is that people form groups. One example of this is the Corrymeela community. This is a Christian community in Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants, 2 different Christian denominations, have been fighting in this country for many years. The community was set up by Catholics and Protestants as a safe and tolerant place where people can meet and talk freely and end differences between the groups. The fact that people can get together, get to know people from the other group, and know what they are like, means that people are less likely to show discrimination towards each other. Think about other groups that could be set up potentially in your community. For example, a youth group could bring people together in spite of their differences. And the fact that people are able to become friends means that we could be fighting against prejudice and discrimination by fighting that cause, ignorance, where people don't know anything about others that belong to groups different to their own. Time for another one of our keys to success. This one's an Islamic teaching, and it's the fact that Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught that Allah does not look upon your appearances, but he looks at your hearts and deeds, your actions. This means that Allah does not judge people on how they look, so a Muslim should not judge another on how they look too. He looks at the things that they do. Thinking about this, on your piece of paper, write down what you think a Muslim's attitude to racism would be likely to be. Remember, attitude means think about whether it's right or wrong, good or bad. Pause the video now and write down your answer. Hopefully, you should have got something along the lines of, this teaching shows that racism is bad because Muhammad taught that Allah does not look upon your appearances, but upon your hearts and deeds. This means that it doesn't matter what you look like, the only thing that matters to God is what you do. Therefore, racism would be bad because racism is an attitude based solely on the way that you look and not on the things that you do. We need to look at another way that we can stop prejudice and discrimination. Here we're going to look at an individual who's tried to stop prejudice and discrimination. Again, I want you to write down 2 bullet point notes which would explain what individuals could do in order to fight prejudice and discrimination. Many religious people have tried to fight discrimination, people like Gandhi, Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King. You should learn about one for the exam. Some information about Martin Luther King. This man down here is in the blue box. Martin Luther King fought against prejudice and discrimination by things like giving speeches, such as the famous I Have a Dream speech, leading boycotts of buses so that black people could sit where they wanted on the bus, marching with school children so that black people got a better education, and creating a group called the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to get civil rights for black people, such as the right to vote. Martin Luther King was assassinated for the work that he did with the civil rights movement, but his legacy lives on, and many people think that it's down to him that black people living in America today have much more equal rights than they ever did in the past. Time for another keywords test. Define harmony. Harmony is living in peace with others. This requires people to act justly and have tolerance and understanding of others. An example of this could be black and white people living together in society without any racism. We would say that they were living in harmony. One question that you may be asked in your exam is whether religions show any sort of prejudice. A good one to think about is whether religions can ever be seen as being sexist. Now, there are arguments for and against this claim. I want you to write down 2 bullet points for each argument. First of all, we'll look at reasons why some people may say they are sexist. The first reason is that Roman Catholics, a Christian denomination, do not allow women to be priests, church leaders. Many people say that this means that they're sexist. Catholics would argue that the disciples, Jesus' closest friends, and the people who Jesus trusted to build the church were all male. This means that women aren't really cut out for the job. Muslims also don't allow female imams. In the same way, many people would say that this is sexist. Women can be just as pious and knowledgeable about a religion and therefore just as able to lead prayers and teach about the religion as anybody else. In the Quran, it says that both husbands and wives have equal rights, but in some situations, men have final say. This seems to suggest that although husbands and wives have equal rights, men and women have equal rights, men sometimes have more of a right to make a final decision. In the Bible, St. Paul said, "Wives, obey your husbands as you obey your Lord." This is pointed to by lots of people to say that Christianity is a sexist religion. Wives seem to have to submit to their husbands, just as they would submit to God, and this doesn't seem fair or equal. In the Bible, it also says women should remain silent in churches. They are not allowed to speak. This suggests that they have no role in church and that their views are not valued. On the other side of the argument, there are lots of teachings to say that religions aren't sexist. Some Christian denominations have allowed women to become priests or ministers for a long time. The Church of England have allowed women to become vicars since 1992, and the Methodist Church have allowed women to become ministers for longer than that. Very recently, in the last year, women have been able to become bishops in the Church of England as well. Muhammad said, "A mother is 3 times more important than a father." This gives the woman a high status in Islam and suggests that women are just as important, if not more important, than men. Muhammad said, "The best of you are those who are best to your wives." This suggests that if you're a good person, you should be kind, generous, caring towards your wife, and shows that people shouldn't be sexist towards others because that wouldn't be being best to your wife. In the Bible it says, "There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Jesus Christ." This teaching suggests that there is no difference in anyone who believes in Jesus Christ. It doesn't matter what religion you are, what race you are, whether you're a slave or a free person, or whether you're male or female. Everybody is just the same. Time for another exam question. This one will be about women and religion. It's a 5-mark exam question, and it is explain religious attitudes to sexism. Refer to religious beliefs and teachings in your answer. Remember, when you're answering a 5-mark question, you need to only use religious views. It's not about what you think. It's only about what religious people would say. You need to use specific religious teachings, and you need to give an explain 2 for a 4-mark question, or 3 for a 5-mark question like the one we're answering here. You must focus on the key word in the question. Here, the key word is sexism, so we need to make sure that we keep on coming back to that in our answer. You've got 5 minutes to answer this question. Pause the video and give yourself 5 minutes. Let's have a look at a model answer then. Compare this to your answer and see how well you've done. Christians think that sexism is wrong because in the Bible it says there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Jesus Christ. This means that it doesn't matter what gender you are because everyone is equal in the eyes of God. Therefore, sexism is wrong because sexism shows inequality, which goes against this teaching. Muslims think it is wrong to be sexist because they believe Allah is compassionate. This means that Allah is kind and loving, so all humans should be kind and loving too. Therefore, sexism is wrong because being sexist is not a loving thing to do. Some Christians believe sexism is not bad because the Bible teaches women must obey their husbands. In the Bible, St. Paul said, "Wives, obey your husband as you obey your Lord." This means a woman must listen to her husband and obey him, so it shows that the woman has less importance than the man. Therefore, it is not wrong to be sexist because the Bible teaches men to be more important than women. Let's have a look at what's happening in this question. The first thing to mention is that we've got 3 points. 1, 2, 3. Remember in the previous slide I said that to answer a 5-mark question, we needed to give 3 clearly explained religious views on the topic. The next thing to say is that all of the points focus on the key word, which is sexism. In each one of the paragraphs, we can see that the beginning and the end of the paragraph both refer to sexism and make sure that we stay focused on the question. Finally, each of the points contains a specific religious teaching. Here we can see there is neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female, for all are one in Jesus Christ. Here we've got the simple teaching of Allah is compassionate, and here we have wives, obey your husbands as you obey the Lord. Each one of these is explained in the context of the question in order to make sure that whatever you are saying picks up the marks because it's referring back to sexism. Make sure that your answer looks something like this, and make sure that it's absolutely clear that you are answering attitudes towards sexism. These could be for or against, so don't worry if you've got a mixture or if you've got all the same. Time for another keywords test. What is the definition for stereotype? A stereotype is having a simple image of people and applying it to everyone within a group. For example, thinking that all women are bad drivers or all terrorists are Muslims. The final thing we need to think about are the Islamic and Christian teachings that we could apply to this topic. We'll start with Islamic teachings, and I want you to write down 3 Islamic teachings that you think that will be most useful or that you'll remember most easily for your exam. The first teaching to talk about is the idea that Allah loves the fair-minded. This comes from the Quran, and it means that Allah loves those who are fair, and as prejudice and discrimination is unfair, Allah would not like those who do it. It's a really simple teaching and a really good one to remember for your exam because you can apply it to any type of prejudice and discrimination. The next teaching is an action that Muslims do. On Hajj, a pilgrimage to Mecca, and one of the 5 pillars, something that all Muslims have to do, all people must dress the same and complete the same actions. This shows that in the eyes of God, everyone is equal, no matter how rich they are or poor they are, what race they belong to, or what country they're from. This could mean that Muslims shouldn't show prejudice or discrimination because everybody's equal in God's eyes. Who are we to go beyond God? Next one. Muhammad said, "A white person is no better than a black person, nor is a black person better than a white person." This is a direct teaching from the Prophet, peace be upon him, and it means that no person is better than another. Everybody is equal, so Muslims shouldn't discriminate against others. Finally, Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The best of you are those who are best to your wives." This means that the way for a man to be best and get to heaven is by treating their wife the best. This proves how important women are in Islam, and it goes against sexism. Next, we need to look at some Christian teachings. Once again, I want you to make sure that you write down the 3 teachings that you think you'll remember most easily or will be most useful in your exam. The first teaching is from the Bible, and it's the idea that from one man, Adam, he made every nation of men. This is referring to the fact that God has made everyone from one person. Every human being comes from Adam, the first human, and this means that everyone really is like one big family and should treat everyone like that. There's no difference between us. The next teaching is the idea that in the Bible it says, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them." Here we need to focus on the use of the word image. God has created people to be like him. He doesn't create anything else to be like him. Animals and plants are different. This means that every human is made with the likeness of God, so every person is as special as everybody else. It doesn't say that a particular group or a particular race are made with the image of God. Every human is made with the image of God. There should be no discrimination because everyone is just as special as one another. In the Bible, it says there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female, for all are one in Jesus Christ. This quotation from St. Paul says that your nationality, gender or race doesn't matter. Everybody is equal in the eyes of Jesus. Everybody would be accepted to being a Christian. People are not judged on their background, but on their actions. Finally, Jesus' close followers were all men. Now, rather than being a direct quotation, this is just a fact from the Bible. All of Jesus' closest disciples were male. There were some examples of females, like Mary Magdalene, but his closest 12 followers were all male. These were the people he entrusted the growing of the church to. This means for some Christians that men have more importance in Christianity, so they should take on leadership roles, like being a priest. Time for our final exam practice question. This is a 6-mark question, so you need to leave yourself 12 minutes in order to do it. The question is, people can do little to bring about harmony in society. 6-mark questions always have something like this underneath them. Do you agree? Give reasons for your answer, showing that you've thought about more than one point of view. Explain religious beliefs and teachings in your answer. The essential things to remember for a 6-mark question are that we peel our points, so we're giving point, evidence, explanation and link. We give religious teachings to support all of our points, and we need to make sure that they are religious teachings that we're giving. We look at both sides of the argument. You can see here that it says that we've thought about more than one point of view, and that we show that we know what the key word means in our answer. Here the key word is harmony, so we need to make sure that we keep on referring back to harmony and linking it to the points that we're making. Okay, think about the question, pause the video and give yourself 12 minutes to answer it. Pause the video now. Let's look at a model answer. See how well you've peeled your points and whether you keep on referring back to the idea of harmony in your answer. Some people may agree because there are always wars going on, so there will never be peace. Other people may disagree because they think that if everyone worked for harmony, it would be achieved. Some Christians may disagree because Martin Luther King did a lot to bring about harmony in society. He believed in love your neighbour, which means being kind and caring to everyone. Therefore, he did protests and marches to make sure that black people were treated fairly, and this ended segregation, bringing harmony in society, so people can do a lot to bring about harmony in society. Some people may agree because religions allow sexism, and many people are religious, so this will always go against harmony. For example, Muslims do not let women become imams, and women cannot become priests in Christianity. Therefore, people can do little to bring about harmony, because religions do the opposite, and many people follow a religion, so are affected by it. Some Muslims agree because they believe Muhammad, peace be upon him, tried to bring about harmony in society, but there is little harmony in the world today. For example, he taught people, treat others the way that you would like to be treated. People today kill each other and use violence not following this teaching, so there is little harmony. Therefore, people can do little to bring about harmony in society because people in the past have tried, but it's still not been achieved. Some people may disagree because the law does a lot to bring about harmony. For example, it has laws against discrimination such as the Race Relations Act and the Sex Discrimination Act. This means that if people do not follow this, they can go to court. Therefore, people can do a lot to bring about harmony in society by enforcing and following the law. If everyone did that, then there would be harmony. Okay, let's have a look at what's going on in this answer. The first thing that we've done is given 2 simple points which justify our opinion on the question. By doing this, we're getting the reader involved in the answer and making it clear that we know what harmony means. Next, we look at our first Peel paragraph. We've got our point. Some Christians may disagree. Our explanation, because Martin Luther King did a lot to bring about harmony in society. Our evidence, he believed in love your neighbour, which means being kind and caring towards everyone. And our link, therefore he did protests and marches to make sure black people were treated fairly, and this ended segregation, bringing about harmony in society. This is the key part. We're linking it back to our key question. Now, as you can see, with all our other Peel paragraphs, we keep on mentioning harmony in our answer, and this is what you need to do in your answers for your exam. On this side, we can see the further points that we could have made to complete our answer. We need to make sure that we're giving at least 4 well-developed points to answer the question. The interesting paragraph here is this one here. This doesn't follow the same format as the others, as we're not using religious examples or teachings in our answer. But because we've used so many earlier on, and because this is so detailed, we get extra marks for this. The example that we give here are the laws against discrimination. We give specific examples of the Race Relations Act and the Sex Discrimination Act. We've linked this back to harmony again, and we've made sure that it's answering the question because we're saying people can do a lot to bring about harmony by enforcing the law. This answer would get 6 out of 6, even though each of the paragraphs doesn't necessarily follow the full Peel structure that we've looked at. Make sure that as many of the paragraphs that you write in your answers have a religious teaching, an explanation, and the key thing is a link back to the question, which mentions the key word from the question, in this case, harmony.